My name is Lauren, and I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania where everyone knew everyone or at least thought they did. From the outside, my life looked normal. A house with a white porch, a school 5 minutes away, parents who stayed together. People assume that means safety. It doesn't always. Some of us learn early that being quiet keeps the peace. I was 10 the first time I realized my feelings were inconvenient. My parents weren't bad people, they were tired people. My dad worked construction, leaving before sunrise. My mom worked retail and came home with swollen feet and no energy left for questions. When I tried to talk about my day, I was met with nods, not answers. When I cried, I was told I was too sensitive, so I stopped talking, stopped crying where anyone could see. At school, silence followed me. I was the girl teachers liked because I didn't cause trouble. The girl classmates ignored until they needed someone to copy homework from. And sometimes the girl they picked on because they knew I wouldn't fight back. They made fun of my clothes, my hair, my body. Middle school is cruel, especially to girls who don't yet know how to defend themselves. I learned to laugh when people laughed at me, hoping that would make it hurt less. It didn't. I started believing something was wrong with me. By 13, I avoided mirrors. By 14, I avoided speaking unless spoken to. By 15, I was exhausted in a way sleep didn't fix. No one noticed. And that's the part people don't talk about enough, how pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it hides behind good grades and polite smiles. At home, things weren't violent. They were cold, emotionally distant. And that distance taught me something dangerous. That love meant being low maintenance. That needing too much would make people leave. So I learned how to need nothing. I cooked for myself when my parents worked late. I stayed in my room. I scrolled through my phone, watching other girls live lives that looked brighter, easier, happier. I wondered what it felt like to be wanted. When I turned 18, I told myself I was finally free. College would be different. I would be different. But the truth is, we don't leave our childhoods behind just because we change locations. We carry them. And mine was about to show up in ways I didn't expect. By the time I met Ethan, I was 19 and desperate for something I didn't yet have words for. I didn't want attention. I wanted safety. I wanted someone to see me and not look away. He worked at a coffee shop near campus. He remembered my order, asked how my classes were going, looked at me like I mattered. That alone felt intoxicating. When he asked for my number, I said yes before fear could talk me out of it. At first, he felt like everything I had been missing. He listened. He held my hand when I talked. He told me I was different, special. And because I had grown up invisible, I clung to that feeling like oxygen. But love doesn't usually turn dark all at once. It changes slowly, quietly, until you don't recognize it anymore. It started with comments. You don't need makeup. You don't need friends like that. You don't need to wear that. At first, I thought it was care, protection, concern. Then it became control. He didn't like when I stayed late at the library. Didn't like when I didn't text back fast enough. Didn't like when I laughed too loudly around other people. When I questioned it, he'd sigh and say, I just care more than other guys would. And because no one had ever cared loudly for me before, I believed him. I learned to shrink again just like I had as a child. I stopped wearing clothes I liked, stopped posting online, stopped mentioning male classmates. I became smaller so he wouldn't feel threatened. And every time I lost another piece of myself, he praised me for being understanding. The first time he yelled at me, it shocked me silent. We were arguing about nothing or everything, and suddenly his voice filled the room. My heart raced. My body froze. Then he apologized, said he was stressed, said he didn't mean it, said he loved me too much. I forgave him because forgiveness was easier than facing the truth. Over time, the yelling returned, then the insults wrapped in jokes, then the blame. If I cried, I was dramatic. If I pulled away, I was cold. If I stayed, I was weak. I didn't recognize myself anymore, but leaving felt impossible. Because I had confused love with survival. I had learned as a girl that peace came from silence, that being agreeable kept people around, that asking for more meant losing everything. So I stayed, until the night I found the messages. I wasn't snooping, I was borrowing his phone to order food. A notification popped up, a name I didn't recognize, a heart emoji. Curiosity turned into dread. There were weeks of messages, photos, plans, intimacy that had nothing to do with me. When I confronted him, He didn't deny it. He said I pushed him away, said I was too quiet, said he needed more. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at my hands, feeling something crack open inside me. Not heartbreak clarity. I realized something in that moment that would change me forever. I had spent my entire life trying to earn love from people who benefited from my silence. So I left, not dramatically, not triumphantly. I packed my things while he was at work and cried the entire drive home. Healing didn't happen instantly. I doubted myself, missed him, questioned whether I overreacted, whether I was too broken to be loved properly. But for the first time in my life, I chose myself even though I didn't know who that was yet. And that choice would lead me somewhere unexpected. Leaving Ethan didn't feel like freedom. It felt like standing in an empty room where something loud had finally stopped and realizing how quiet it was. I moved back home after college ended. Same town, same streets, different version of me. People assumed I was fine. Breakups are common. Young love ends. Life moves on. But what no one saw was the weight I carried. Years of silence, self-doubt, and the belief that I was difficult to love. I slept too much, then not at all. I replayed conversations in my head, wondering where I went wrong. Therapy wasn't something my family talked about. Pain was something you pushed through. So at first, I tried to do that. It didn't work. I found myself flinching when voices got loud, apologizing for things that weren't my fault, feeling guilty for resting. One afternoon, I caught my reflection in a store window and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked tired, older than she should have. That was the moment I realized something important. I didn't just need to heal from a relationship. I needed to heal from a lifetime of believing I didn't matter. So I started small. I booked a therapy appointment and almost canceled it 5 times before walking in. I cried the entire first session not about Ethan, but about the little girl who learned early how to disappear. My therapist said something that stayed with me. You learn to survive. Now you have to learn to live. Living felt unfamiliar. I said no when I wanted to. I spoke up when something hurt. I let friendships end instead of forcing myself to stay. Some people didn't like the new me. They said I'd changed, said I was selfish, said I was too much. But I was finally enough for myself. I started journaling, writing things I had never said out loud, naming emotions instead of burying them. For the first time, I allowed myself to be angry, not destructive, but honest. Angry at being overlooked, angry at being taught silence was kindness, angry at being loved only when I was convenient. And slowly, something shifted. I laughed again, real laughter. I made friends who didn't ask me to shrink. I learned that love doesn't require endurance. Healing wasn't pretty. It came with relapses, doubt, lonely nights, but it also came with peace. I began to understand that my worth had never been missing, it had just been buried under years of neglect and fear. And that understanding changed how I walked through the world. I used to think healing had an end date, like one day I'd wake up and feel finished whole, confident, untouched by the past. But healing doesn't work like that. It's not a destination, it's a practice. Some days, I still feel like that quiet girl again, the one who apologizes too fast, the one who hesitates before speaking, the one who wonders if she's asking for too much. But now, I notice it, and noticing is power. I'm in my late 20s now. I live in a different city. I have a job I worked hard for, a small apartment that finally feels like mine, a life that doesn't look perfect but feels honest. I date differently now, slowly, carefully. I listen to my instincts instead of explaining them away. The first time a man raised his voice at me, I left. No arguing, no convincing, no second chances. That used to scare me, how easy it felt to walk away. Now I know that's growth. I've learned that love isn't loud or demanding. It doesn't require self-erasure. It doesn't punish you for having needs. And I've learned that strength doesn't always look like confidence. Sometimes it looks like rest. Sometimes it looks like saying, I can't do this anymore. Sometimes it looks like choosing yourself even when no one is clapping. There are still moments when the past taps me on the shoulder, a comment about my body, a dismissive tone at work, a reminder of a version of me that once accepted less. But now, I respond differently. I speak, I pause, I protect myself. And I wish I could go back and tell that younger version of me something important. You were never too quiet. You were never too sensitive. You were responding to an environment that didn't know how to hold you. So many women grow up learning how to endure instead of how to heal. We're taught to be polite, to be agreeable, to be grateful for scraps of affection. And then we wonder why so many of us end up exhausted, anxious, or broken-hearted wondering what's wrong with us. Nothing was ever wrong with us. What we faced wasn't small. It just went unnoticed. I share this story not because I think it as unique, but because I know it as common. There are women listening right now who learned to stay quiet to survive. Women who stayed in relationships longer than they should have. Women who confused love with sacrifice. Women who are still carrying pain no one ever acknowledged. If that's you, I want you to know something. You're not behind. You're not weak. And you're not alone. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing yourself again and again even when it's uncomfortable. I'm still becoming the woman I needed when I was younger. And maybe you are too. If you've listened this far, I want to hear from you. Have you ever stayed quiet just to keep the peace? Have you ever loved someone who slowly made you feel smaller? At what moment did you realize you deserved more? And what would you say today to the younger version of yourself? Your story matters too. Share it in the comments. Someone reading it might realize they're not alone.